I'm Marcus Smith, and this is Constant Wonder. Join us as we quest for the awe and wonder of knowing we are part of something infinitely larger than ourselves.
I think I sort of respond to little signs all the time, actually. I'm the sort of person that when I go to a beach, I'll pick up 3 or 4 beautiful pebbles that seem in some way significant to me. And I don't quite know what I do with all of these signs. It's hopeful and also fascinating as well. I love the idea of undertaking an arduous journey to a special place where you can be changed.
Fiona Robertson detects and finds comfort and meaning in what she calls little signs, physical objects like these beach pebbles that she comes across in various places. I can relate. If you're anything like me, maybe you too sense something about certain objects that lends them more meaning than just their raw physicality. Memorable artifacts that carry some sort of deeper reality than meets the eye. For instance, I've kept my father's bosun's whistle from when he was a young sailor. I've even kept something as seemingly mundane as a steel paperweight that once rested on his writing desk. That paperweight probably bore no more significance for him than a paperclip. But for me, its cylindrical, polished steel surface still feels warm from his own hand, having held it years ago. It has, of course, passed through many other hands since then, but to my mind, the warmth is his. We all have our own ways of feeling connected to the past. Maybe it's like Fiona's pebbles. Maybe it's a book with generations of names written inside the cover. Now, this is important. Of all the objects Fiona Robertson feels a connection to, prehistoric stones rank highest of all in her estimation, enormous ones. They've become an obsession for her. You could say she collects them, although they don't move, nor would any of them slip easily into your pocket, because we're talking megaliths. A megalith is a massive stone that once figured in some way as part of a prehistoric monument, such as a stone circle. The poster child for these is, of course, Stonehenge. That mesmerizing ring of upright stones with massive horizontal lintels that straddle across some of them. The whole lot of them standing watch for thousands of years as mysterious sentinels. For Fiona, touching one of these stones is not unlike touching my father's whistle or his paperweight. Though in her case, she's reaching back in time not over mere years, but across millennia. Now, as it happens, these megaliths connect her not just to a generalized, vast, and deep human history, but also to her own very specific history and shared past with her late husband, Stephen. Today on Constant Wonder, Fiona Robertson visits with us about her book, Stonelands, A Journey of Darkness and Light Through Britain's Ancient Places. This book has been a project of great love, in which she conjoins the course of her own life to Britain's prehistoric standing stones. We'll get into it all now with her memory of having made a trip with her family when she was just 9 or 10 years old to the mountains of Switzerland.
It really sticks in my mind. It was a family holiday to Switzerland, and it was the first time that I'd seen really huge mountains. I remember there was one mountain in particular called the Jungfrau, which was just so grand and kind of scary and beautiful. And I was completely blown away by the idea that there were parts of the world where people didn't live and that it was almost like a different domain to the everyday one.
Did that contribute to a change of your view of the world?
I think it did, yes. I mean, it really sparked my imagination. And I remember that I came back and I was at school, and the first thing that happened after the school holidays is we had an English class where we were asked to write a poem. And I wrote a poem about this mountain and how extraordinary it was. And I think ever since then, I've really loved mountains. And some of the ancient sites that I visited, places like Castlerig in Cumbria, which has got this wonderful setting of peaks all around it and kind of inspires a feeling of awe. I still recognise in the feelings that I feel somewhere like Castlereagh how I felt as this 9 or 10-year-old child seeing the mountains of Switzerland for the first time.
For me, it was looking at some forested land on low hills in Southern California during sixth grade camp. So I would have been in, I don't know, about 9, 10 years old. I don't know. A young kid. And seeing something like the mist, the early morning fog and mist floating through the tops of pine trees. And then I saw a stag emerge from this mist. It's one of those moments I never forgot. I don't want to presuppose that that's what was going through you watching this mountain in Switzerland, but I bet you it was the same.
And the way you described that actually sent a shiver down my spine. I feel like I was there with you seeing this wonderful stag emerge. Sometimes in these moments, we get a glimpse of archetypes. I think that's why maybe our experiences will resonate with other people's experiences, because the idea of a horned being, and then the mist itself, and then the mountains too, as these kind of special domains that you may venture into at the peril of your own life and emerge changed. All these things really resonate.
One of the megalith sites Fiona frequents is the Castlereagh Stone Circle, just outside the small town of Keswick in northwest England. The circle's pointed stones are set high in the hills with a surrounding ring of mountains. They're thought to have been positioned there about 4,500 years ago in the late Neolithic period.
And actually, just to sort of take it to Castlereagh for a moment, the idea that you could go into a dangerous place as a kind of mythic journey, because from Castlereagh, the stone circle in Cumbria, you can see the mountains where the stone axes were quarried and shaped. And these axes seem to have been very special to ancient people. They spent a long time making them, and the resulting axe was sometimes very fragile. So it didn't necessarily have a practical use, but it would have looked very beautiful. People have theorized that the idea of making a sacred journey up a mountain to source this magical rock and bring it back down was something that really, resonated with people of the time.
You sound like you're quite fond of this stone circle at Castlereagh.
Yes, it's very, very beautiful, although it's one of the busier ones because it's just outside the town. So it's not really somewhere you can go to kind of commune with nature and yourself.
But do you try to nonetheless? Do you try to bracket off the distractions and be present for the experience?
Well, my method is to go when it's heavily raining or in the middle of the night. So then you're less likely to meet people.
This might be jumping the gun just a little bit, but would you walk us through the last time you were at Castlereagh? What was your approach to the place?
So the last time I went to Castlereagh with the children, we stayed in the cottage in the town in Keswick. And so from there, it's a walk. So I walked up the hill, and what's lovely about walking to a site from wherever you're staying is that gradually the land will change and you'll leave the town behind and you'll get higher, and it'll start to feel more like you're in the hills. It's quite steep, and there's a bench by the sides of the road with a sign by it saying, "Rest your bones on the way to the stones," which is rather lovely. So this return to Keswick was quite a long time after I'd seen the site for the first time. So as I was walking up, it was in springtime, Easter time, I was also reliving my first experience of going there a long time ago, 20 years before, in November, when it had been very, very misty. So I had this strange feeling of being simultaneously there in the present and there in the past. And I get this a lot at stone circles. And then when you walk through the gate, there's a slight rise, and you can see the tips of the stones, and they almost look like kind of horns emerging from the ground. And then as you get higher up the hill, suddenly the whole circle's revealed to you, and it's really a heart-stopping moment. It's almost like there's a sort of slightly tilted shelf with this stone circle on it, and then all around are the mountains, as if the people had built it to offer the stone circle up to the sky.
As you describe that, I can't help but think of the word pilgrimage. I'm already interpreting your experience. I've never even walked with you to any of these places. That's what we should do. We should walk together, and you could guide me. Is it a pilgrimage?
I would love that. Yes, I think pilgrimage is a very good term for it. I mean, I've been very interested in pilgrimage for as far back as I can remember. I love the idea of undertaking an arduous journey to a special place where you can be changed. And I love the fact that there are still pilgrimages all around the world today. So I think that my quest to visit stone circles does have something of the pilgrimage about it. And there are certain sites that I return to over and over again. And one of them is a place called Boscawen Noon, and it's down in Cornwall in the very far west. And every time I see that place, it strikes me as more beautiful than the last time I saw it. It's like a perfect stone circle. And with that site as well, it used to stand on its own on the moor, but these days it's surrounded by a hedge. And you approach it and you get a glimpse of it over the stile. The stone's standing there, and I've never met anyone else there. And my heart thumps because it's just so beautiful and enchanting and different. I always go there in the autumn, so sometimes there's a mist, like the one you describe in the hills of California. There's a mist overlying the stones, and these silvery stones are emerging from it. It's just so magical.
The main point of reference that most of us have for anything like a stone circle is obviously going to be Stonehenge. When you're describing these other stone circles, are we talking something that is significantly smaller? Does it have horizontal slabs still resting on top of vertical stones? What's the difference between Stonehenge and other stone circles you visit?
So yes, Stonehenge is significantly larger and more complicated than all the other sites, really. So the amazing thing about Stonehenge is that the stones were actually jointed. So the people who built it used carpentry techniques to slot the stones together with a mortise and tenon jointing. And then to actually build structures, the trilithons are the structures with the two uprights and then the slab on top. And you have a series of these going around the circle. I mean, Stonehenge is really magnificent, but to get to Stonehenge, you have to, number one, pay quite a high entry price. Number two, you have to contend with millions of other people buzzing around you. And number three, unless you go on a special tour or go at one of the solstices, you're not allowed to touch the stones. For me, that negates the whole experience because touching the stones is such an integral part of it.
Fiona has already described how in her early years, a family visit to the Swiss Alps with its famous Jungfrau instilled a passion for finding some kind of magic in the world around her. Another catalyst for her in childhood, and this is something a lot of us can identify with, was reading all the right sorts of books.
I read a lot. I read books of adventure, most notably The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And I think I was reading those at the time that I saw the Jungfrau. So there's a bit in The Hobbit where they're in the mountains and they encounter goblins. And those mountains could have been, they could be the mountains of the Alps for me. So I had this idea of mountains as an abode of strange creatures where anything may happen. And also I had the idea of long journeys and walking and the adventures that you might go on. And so all of these things were in my mind, really. But it wasn't until I got to Avebury and I saw the ancient landscape there for the first time that I actually got a sense of what there was out there to be found in the British landscape. So I went to Avebury when I was 18 or so with my boyfriends of the time, and we decided that we were going to do this walk to Avebury.
The Avebury Henge and stone circles are among the largest surviving Neolithic and Bronze Age sites in Britain and are situated a little to the north of Stonehenge. What you'll find there is a huge circular bank with a ditch cut toward the inside. Then, to the inside of the ditch is a stone circle that originally contained about 100 stones of varying heights. Inside that large stone circle are set two smaller ones. As Fiona notes, Avebury is also part of a much larger complex of Neolithic sites like Silbury Hill and West Kennet Avenue. The route Fiona is describing, undertaken together with her friends, starts in Wiltshire, about 1.5 hours by car west of London. And from Wiltshire, the walk to Avebury is about 33 kilometers or 20 miles.
We started walking and we were just really naive, and I'm not sure we even had a map. We were just wandering around the roads, trying to sort of have this amazing experience, getting caught up in major roads and town centres. And eventually we got fed up of this and we got the bus. So the journey didn't quite work out. But then we got to Avebury and it was just incredible seeing for the first time these huge ancient stones surrounding the village. And then there were rows of stones, double rows, marching out into the countryside. And then there was this huge mound called Silbury Hill rising up above the English farmland. And these crazy things, like up on the ridgeway, there were these clumps of trees, which were basically ancient burial mounds. And the whole landscape just seemed full of magic and mystery. I was just blown away by it, really. And that set me on a path of being interested in ancient mysteries and of course, in archaeology itself. At age 18, I had an inquiring mind and didn't know anything about it at all and was just soaking it all up. So at Avebury, I was also excited to see all the kind of colourful people who were there, the druids, the dowsers, the travellers, the ravers, all hanging around the stones, playing guitar, which, just immediately entranced me. And I haven't really kind of moved away from that since. It still entrances me now.
You're smitten by this experience at Avebury, by the people, the stones. You're prepared from childhood by reading some Tolkien and thinking about goblins and enchanted places. But this is kind of an opportunity to move away from fiction and to go to real stones and real prehistoric peoples from Neolithic times. And how do you sort that out, your fantasy, from the tangible reality of these stones?
Well, the thing is that the reality is just as exciting, if not more so, than the sort of speculation and the theories and the fables. I mean, we know that ancient people were interested in the turning of the seasons, for example. So there are certain places where, like Stonehenge is one, where you can stand at midwinter sunset or summer solstice sunrise, and you can see that the monument was very deliberately built to honour the turning of the seasons. So to be able to kind of connect with their ideas in that way is pretty breathtaking to me. On the downs above Avebury, there's a stone called the Polisher. This is just a natural stone, but in it you can see these parallel grooves and a dish-shaped indentation which was worn into the stone by people shaping and sharpening and polishing their axes 5,000 years ago, probably before the Avebury stone rows and stone circles were built. That to me is absolutely phenomenal, that in these ancient places you can actually touch, you can run your fingers down the marbled grooves created by people interacting with that place so many thousands of years ago.
Why would you take your fingers and run it down? I mean, what's the impulse there?
I guess because it's the material culture of the past. I know that people in the past would have touched that. And this goes back to my sort of urge to actually touch the stone, not just see it. And somehow their hands touched it, and my hand touches it today. Actually, because I knew I was going to talk to you, I had a little look at what sort of ancient sites there are in Utah, and I saw some of the pictures of the petroglyphs, including hands. For some reason, it's hands that get me most of all. I find it so touching. But, it's like you feel like you're reaching out and you're touching the hands of these people yourself. And it's such a sort of human act, isn't it? And it's an act of friendship to touch their hands. You're not fighting with them, you're connecting with them. And and it's like, in the Sistine Chapel, the awakening of man, the hand of God touching the hand of Adam. Oh, there's something so primal and amazing about it.
I've had opportunity on occasion to see some of the petroglyphs here in Utah. And so I have firsthand experience. I know what you're talking about. I know what it's like to stand there and to see a depiction of a human or of some kind of a sheep,
yeah,
or a lizard and goats, what have you, and to imagine the time when that image was drawn onto the rock or carved into the rock. The sheer expanse of time is so staggering to me. It's hard for me to go to the cliche that I'm bridging time, and yet I try. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. And it sort of falls away. The gap between them and us falls away, and you realise some of the eternal truths of human nature, which, particularly in times that are troubled like our own, I find really reassuring.
I'd like to bring in some of your family story now, too. And Stephen, when did you first meet? What did you find in common? Was he given towards these stones the way you were? How did that all work out in your relationship?
Well, we were both 31 when we met, and we'd sort of frittered away our 20s. I don't know what we were doing really, and then we'd gone travelling, and we'd both been travelling around the world, and we'd come back, and we met in London, and we were both wondering what we were going to do with our lives next. And I guess we were both looking to find love, really. And so we met each other, and there's this instant click because we both loved books, we both loved hiking, we both loved interacting with nature, and we both loved ancient places. One of the very first things we did, only a few weeks after we met, was we went for this 2-day hike along the Ridgeway. And the Ridgeway is a very old path. There was a theory that the Ridgeway was a Neolithic path stretching for hundreds of miles across the country, but actually it's thought it's a bit more modern than that, because parts of it are crossed over by Bronze Age and Iron Age field systems.
And whereabouts is this exactly? Are we talking south of Hadrian's Wall, or is it?
It's in southern England. It's on the chalk downlands of southern England. So this track, we followed it from the Uffington White Horse, which is in Oxfordshire. So the Uffington White Horse is this fantastic Bronze Age chalk horse carved into the landscape. I think it's 3,000 years old. And what's amazing about the White Horse is that for 3,000 years, people have been renewing it again and again. Because with a stone, you can get a stone up, bed it in well, it will stay upright for 4,000 or 5,000 years. But a chalk horse, if you leave it, it's going to be gone within a couple of years. So year after year after year, through all those 3 millennia, people were recarving that white horse, which is extraordinary. That's one of the places that we saw together.
Help me envision this white horse. I can't imagine if it's flat on the ground, if it's an upright stone.
I think you might know it if you see it, because it's quite famous. It's the image of a running horse carved into the hillside. It looks a bit like Iron Age coinage, but it also has a sort of modernist quality to it.
Well, I'm going to just pull it up on a computer screen and take a look at it.
I have it on a T-shirt, and it's used in all sorts of iconography, really. It's a real design classic.
It's stunning.
Stunning, isn't it?
As soon as I saw it on my screen, I remembered this horse from photos I've seen over the years. I dare say you're very likely to recognize it yourself, and it's worth a look up. I would describe the Uffington White Horse as abstract, gigantic line art, as if drawn in just a few bold brush strokes by a Japanese calligrapher, but white on green. As I've read up on it in recent days, it appears that some scholars have made a case for this ancient figure being a sun horse. That reflects mythologies according to which the sun is drawn across the sky by a horse. Fiona will touch on this term in just a bit, offering it a slightly different twist. As to its size, it is huge, about 110 meters or 360 feet long. Whoever made it during the Bronze Age dug trenches into the hillside and then filled those trenches with crushed white chalk. For thousands of years, locals have tended to the horse, making sure that the trenches are refilled with chalk and the horse remains visible, except for a few years during World War II, when the horse was covered over so that it couldn't be used as a landmark by German military aviators. Fiona Robertson is author of Stonelands, A Journey of Darkness and Light Through Britain's Ancient Places. You're listening to Constant Wonder. I'm Marcus Smith. I've worked with lots of younger kids, including my own, and I know firsthand the great feeling of finding just the right kind of educational listening for younger folk. We've got a podcast perfectly suited for younger hearts and minds. It's the Constant Wonder Kids podcast. Stories from the original Constant Wonder podcast featured in a way that's totally accessible for children from about kindergarten age until they hit middle school. Many of these episodes are adventure stories out in nature with fascinating people who go out into the wide world to see its wonder and awe. Curious, developing kids love this podcast, as well as the grown-ups who guide and love these kids. True stories about ocean divers, bird scientists, volcanologists, non-experts who rescue animals and rewild and replant damaged habitats. Positive stories about people doing positive things for the world. Would you like to get inside the mind of a bee, or find tiny hummingbird eggs, or go in search of seahorses? Maybe discover amazing ways that some plants can think and communicate. Constant Wonder Kids is perfect for road trips, bedtime listening, maybe just for whenever your brain's got an itch that needs to be scratched. New episodes drop on Mondays. Tune in to Constant Wonder Kids on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to Constant Wonder.
So one of the amazing things about this white horse is you can't really see it that well from the ground. The best view you can get of it really is from the bottom, but it's kind of foreshortened, so you don't see it in all its glory. And then from the top, you can see an eye and a bit of the head. Actually, it shows that 3,000 years ago, people had the vision to create something that was only going to be fully visible to the sky, which is why it's a sky horse. There's a kind of little hill called the Dragon's Hill. If you stand on that hill in midwinter, you watch the sunrise pass along the ridge above the white horse. And so it's thought that this is like the one that was found in the bog in Trondheim in Denmark.
Milestones, very large of course, along our journey with Fiona Robertson have been at places named Castlerig or Keswick, Boscawen Un near Land's End in Cornwall, or Avebury or Uffington. And now we'll hear why a place called the Ridgeway is so memorable and transformative for Fiona, and it has to do with the start of her relationship with Stephen. The Ridgeway was perhaps an unconventional choice for setting out on life together, but a 2-day hike along this route for Fiona and Stephen made perfect sense.
We'd only just met, and I was wearing really inappropriate sandals, which gave me blisters, and I was moaning about them, and he got a little bit cross. But apart from that, we got on really, really well. It was a bit of a risk to take going on this hike, because if it had gone badly, it would have been awful. But it went fantastically well. And we walked from the Uffington White Horse to Wayland's Smithy, which was also the first time I'd seen Wayland's Smithy. And this is a Neolithic burial chamber, really old, 5,000 years old. And I remember walking into its little grove of beech trees and feeling like I was walking to a country church, and as if the light was falling through the leaves of the beech trees onto the nave. And it was just so beautiful. Later that day, we found a place to wild camp on a hill, and in the field next door there was a burial mound. And I remember us heating up our dinner on this little camping stove that Stephen had brought, and eating our baked beans and drinking cider and looking down and thinking that everything was enchanted, even the lights of Swindon, which is a town, which most people wouldn't say was enchanted, but somehow those lights were like the stars, kind of this whole mythic terrain of Wiltshire. And the next day, then we walked to Avebury. And that's how Stonelands begins. It starts with us walking down the hill off the trail and going to the Red Lion, which is a pub within the stones of the circle, and then going to sit by the stones and just sort of enjoying this enchanted terrain.
From that day, how many years were you together with Stephen?
Not quite 20, 19 and a bit.
You lost Stephen, and that factors very prominently in your telling of this story in Stonelands. And you talked about hitting it off and having so much in common. And yet the point of divergence, as I understand it, was that you were more given, perhaps, to exploring the megaliths, and he would be looking at nature, at birds, while you were doing that.
Yes.
Is that right?
So he was interested in the stones, but not as kind of mad for them as I was. And he loved birds. He would often have his binoculars there and be eagerly spotting them, the buzzards and the goldfinches or whatever. So we were kind of working in tandem on that front. But we both absolutely loved getting out into nature and having a hike.
This pairing is beautiful to me because if you think about a bird and the lifespan of a single bird and then the age of a stone and how long it's been in its place after being moved there, and this comparison, this juxtaposition of bird and stone, what do you make of that?
I like that. Yeah. And you can say more on that because birds seem so fragile, don't they? And birds fly, of course, whereas a stone is above all grounded and solid and reassuring. So, yes, I guess they do work very well together.
But the fact that there's this divergence was not a problem for your relationship.
No, I mean, he also was very interested in history. He had a broad interest in things, whereas I guess with me it was verging on the geekery, my obsession with megaliths.
Well, over the course of your relationship and then also a family with children, were these routine outings? Were these weekly, monthly, once a year? How important was getting out to places?
Well, we would go out and do something every week. Now, we live in southeast London, so we do have some stones not far from us, about 40 minutes drive away, the Medway megaliths. And these stones are actually pretty amazing because they're amongst the oldest in Britain, potentially 6,000 years old. Sometimes we would look at those and then other times we would maybe walk along the river or we would go cycling together somewhere. But our holidays were often connected with stones. So we would go to Brittany or to Cornwall or to the Isle of Mull or the Isle of Lewis. I'd normally kind of negotiate some kind of stones aspect to our summer and Easter and also autumn breaks. Oh, poor Stephen, looking back, no, I think he liked the stones, he did. And poor children as well, gosh.
Was there an indoctrination of the children to make sure that they came along with you and loved these stones too?
The thing is, they're still coming to stones with me now, and if you were to ask them if they loved standing stones, they would definitely say no. But on the other hand, they don't really complain. I mean, they'll quite happily set out for a hike to a stone. They like the way that it gives a destination, and I think lots of people find that. I'm really jealous of people that have an actual prehistoric standing stone in their locality that they can walk to as a destination for the walk, and that becomes a kind of friend.
Yeah. I want to explore the fact that for some people, it's a destination for a walk. And for some people, it's an excuse to be outdoors. For you, though, it moves into a terrain beyond enchantment of childhood, beyond fiction. How do we describe it? Is it religious? Is it spiritual? Is it shamanic? What is it that you do?
I mean, I don't practice any religion. I do have a strong sense of the spiritual, and I'm getting more like that as I grow older. Because obviously, as you grow older, you get closer to death, and you have to confront your own mortality as well as other people's. And there's something about standing stones that have lasted through all these millennia that express lasting human truths, and yet have existed for so much longer than any human will, that I find kind of comforting and reassuring and thought-provoking. These places, we don't know what they were used for in ancient times. Maybe they were used in some spiritual way. Maybe they were used in some way beneficial, or maybe they had some horrible purpose. I mean, for all we know, they were used as places for people to be executed, or we just don't know, do we? But they're certainly places that people now find very special and interact with in spiritual ways and go to for ceremonies, and people get married there. People hold Wheel of the Year ceremonies. People go there to observe the turnings of the seasons. People have really intense spiritual experiences at these sites. So for me, there's something special, and I feel like there's places that need to be respected as archaeological artifacts, but also more than that as spiritual places.
Well, having described that the way you just did, and I don't want to tread on anything that's private, but you talk about intense spiritual experiences. And if I think back on my life, I have had moments in special places that were intense and that were spiritual and that I've never forgotten. Have you had intense spiritual experiences while you were attentive to a special place?
Yes, absolutely. The site that I mentioned before, Boscawen in Cornwall, is somewhere, I remember walking into that site, and it's always close to Samhain when I go there, which is one of the Year of the Wheel festivals, and it's the festival of the dead. It's the time when the veil between this world and the other world is supposed to thin. And it's one of the festivals that really resonates with me. And I remember one time going there and there was the mist lying heavily on the stones.
Fiona, at this point in our conversation, was recounting a time after Stephen had passed away from cancer.
There's this one stone there made out of quartz, which I'm always drawn to touch and rest my cheek against. And I remember feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, which I've never actually felt before. It was a really strange, powerful moment. And then there was another time in the Ring of Brodgar in Scotland where I felt Stephen's presence there. We were staying in a cottage close by. I'd selected the cottage because it wasn't far from the Ring of Brodgar and the Stones of Stennis, and I knew that they could get quite crowded in the day, so I wanted to be able to go back there at different times of day. And it was dusk, and I walked right up to the stones. Sometimes you can't go up there because they're worried about erosion, but at that time it was open, so I walked right up. I could see the sun. The sun suddenly moved, and it moved out from a cloud, and it sent these rays of light down over the loch, and it was just so glorious, really. I was standing there with these stones, and they'd been standing there for 5 millennia. I was thinking about Stephen because I was very sad that he wasn't there with me, because we'd been talking about going to Orkney ever since we first met, and I'd recently found this list of things that he'd made that we were going to do together. I was thinking about the passing of time, and I just had a strong sense of his presence, and yeah, that was really powerful. There's been a few kind of crazy moments like this. Another one was at the Polisher's Stone above Avebury, where I ran my fingers down the marbled grooves made by the sharpening of the axes, and just had this vertiginous sense of going back through time and connecting with people 5,000 years before.
Stephen passed away from cancer, and you decided at some point that your story of your relationship, of his illness and his passing, and your family story, and all these hikes and these places, that it was somehow interconnected in a profound way. And when you went to Orkney there, you kind of went there for Stephen because he wasn't able to go himself?
Yes, exactly that. He was a climber, so his thing for rock was above all climbing. And there's a very famous rock stack there called the Old Man of Hoy, which he had been meaning to climb. He never managed to do it, even though it was this great ambition of his. So we went to Hoy. I really wanted to see I'm going to stop crying now. I really wanted to see the Old Man of Hoy because of him, really.
Here now is the specific place Fiona is taking us. Off the coast of the Scottish Isle of Orkney, there stands a famous natural rock formation. Technically, it's a sea stack. It's 137 meters tall, 449 feet. It stands like a lone chimney left behind after a house fire. Much more massive, though, of course, and stands across the water from a mighty wall, a sheer stone cliff. Erosion by wind and rain over the ages has shaped the Old Man of Hoy, forming and separating him from out of the cliff. Fiona's trip there, together with her children, was taken, as you'll hear her relate, in memory of their late husband and father, Stephen.
So we got to this place where it was very close to the cliff edge, and you can see the rock stack is a little way out to sea. And then you've got this very sheer cliff. So I kind of inched out on my belly until I was like looking down over the drop, and I could see all of the Old Man of Hoy from the bottom to the top. And I let go a few strands of his hair that I'd cut from his head when he was in hospital, after he died, actually. And I sort of let them go because I wanted a bit of him to be there. I thought he'd like that, really. Rather than scatter ashes at a stone circle or something, which I don't think would have been his thing, but I think he would have loved the idea of a bit of him blowing up to the top of the Old Man of Hoy.
Thank you for sharing that. I know how near the experience is. Was this day long after his passing, and how old were the children with you at the time there?
We went to Orkney, not the year after he died, but the year after that. Yeah, the kids were, I think, 14 and 11, I think.
Were they participating with you in commemorating Stephen through this trip, or were they tag-alongs?
I think, we tried to keep him in mind. We always sort of keep him at the forefront of what we're doing. The trip was very much about him for them as well. While we were in Orkney, everywhere we went, there were seals. This was quite powerful for me and the kids because we were talking about the legends of Selkies, which are parts human and parts seal. And we were thinking of Stephen as a Selkie because he was a big surfer. And in his wetsuit, I used to always say that he looked like a seal. If we were in a lovely sort of seaside place, he used to just spontaneously suddenly strip off and jump into the water in his underwear. Or sometimes he had his swimmers with him because he just loved the water so much. And this time at Orford Ness in Suffolk, within a minute or so of getting into the water, he realised there was a seal in there with him, and that the seal swam quite close up to him and was clearly watching him, fascinated by this human that had entered his domain. He was so proud of it. And then later, when I was looking through his notebooks after he died, I found a record of this experience with the seal, and he'd mentioned how Fee on the beach and the kids and everyone else had seen, and he was so proud of it. Ever after, we would make a point of looking for seals. And when we were in Scilly, there was one time where Stephen and the kids and I were sitting on this long spit, on this headland, and the kids started singing to call up the seals. And one by one, they kind of popped out of the water. So there's a kind of family connection between us and seals. So after he died, when we went to Orkney, we were looking for the seals. On the very last night, there was this beautiful moment where I was loading up the car because we had an early start the next day, and I was looking out and I suddenly saw a seal in the bay, and then another one and another and another. And then I realised the whole bay was full of seals, and I called the kids, and then so we all stood there together looking at the seals, and I was certainly thinking about Stephen, and I think they were too.
I'm contemplating that whole scene. In the pursuit of these precious moments, or the potential for important, profound moments, and you've even described sort of like the veil between our realm and the realm of the dead being thin at times, why would nature have something to do with that veil? I'm interested in that.
For me, divinity is in nature. I yearn for those days when every spring and every mountain peak and every tree had a spirit living in it. Those places were seen as being holy. We've lost that in a way, and it would be good to get some of that back.
Is it too risky to prescribe ways of getting that back?
My recommendation would be to go to a stone circle at solstice. Maybe you don't have a stone circle in your area, but go to a hilltop or go to a special place where you can see the horizon and watch the sunrise. Watch the sunrise on the shortest day of the year and just spend a moment realising that you are part of this turning universe, the endless dance of the planets and the coming and going of the light and being born and dying, and these endless cycles that go on, and just feel a part of that, really.
Yeah, yeah. When the wall came down in East Germany, it was October. And in the season from October leading up to the solstice, the winter solstice, so much transpired in Eastern Europe and approaching that the darkest season of the year. And politically, so much darkness had prevailed in so much of Europe, but it was a season approaching more and more hope, And I took a walk on the day that I knew that Ceausescu had been executed. I was walking on crumpling leaves. It was very, not foggy, but overcast and gray. And an enormous flock of crows, black crows, came and alighted in the trees above me. And to me, it was a sort of a turning point in history where I knew the people of Romania were wanting a new life, and they had overthrown their dictator, and a new era was commencing. And I knew it, and I sensed sort of this convergence that was kind of unearthly.
That's amazing.
And it had nature in the story for me.
Yeah.
No stones, no large stones present for me.
I really feel like we're living in dark times now. We're not just in a dark season of the year, but we're in very dark times with so much hatred and bitterness and people not being able to communicate with each other. And actually, the way to get through that is to ground ourselves, really. Just as the stones are embedded in the earth, we need to embed ourselves in the earth and go back to what matters, to the people around us and to the turning of the seasons, and to sort of just find hope in the fact that humanity's gone through terrible times before, and, I guess we'll go through terrible times again, but we can also find joy and companionship and connection, just like we're connecting now across the Atlantic.
Many thanks to Fiona Robertson for letting us connect with her and get to know some of her story and her remarkable spirit. Her book is titled Stonelands, A Journey of Darkness and Light Through Britain's Ancient Places. You can follow her megalith adventures on Instagram. Just look for a link on the web. You can find us at byuradio.org/constantwonder. And as always, if you were moved by this episode, we would very much appreciate a rating and review of our podcast. That helps us connect with many more people who are also on the quest for awe and wonder in life. This episode was produced by Jess Scoville with help from Amelia Scott. Sound design by Gabriel Haro. I'm Marcus Smith. Constant Wonder is a production of BYU Radio. I've got another podcast to recommend to you from the BYU Radio family of podcasts. It's called The Appleseed. Each episode features master storytellers sharing all kinds of stories for you and your family, folk tales, fairy tales, personal and family tales. It's ideal for road trips, bedtime, or any time you're looking for something that the whole family can enjoy together. And here's a great side effect of listening to The Appleseed. It has a nearly magical ability to conjure up a whole lot of healthy storytelling right at home, and it often prompts the sharing of precious memories as well. Be sure to catch The Appleseed wherever you get your podcasts.